I haven't listened to anything you've said in the last 20 seconds.
Damn it, Trevor.
Oh, God, I hate you so much.
Well, it's you. We can cross off the reading.
I watch almost everything, and the majority of it is terrible.
What is this podcast about?
My recorder keeps turning off.
Damn it, Trevor. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of No-Win Scenario. I am one of your hosts, Don Schechter, and with me is Trevor. Trevor, how you doing today?
Terrible, because this is the 9th take of this intro, and I'm so tired of dealing with
9th, 10th, 11th. It's been nonstop having to listen to your voice. I agree. It's been tough. But thankfully, we'll keep this short because we've got Liz Kloczkowski, the art director for Star Trek Picard Season 3 coming up, which I'm super excited about. And we had Dave Blass, the production designer, in our first episode, and I thought it was just a very interesting conversation we had with him.
Dave is a fantastic guest, and what I like about what's hard about guests is that they can be very talented regarding what they do, but are they the most compelling person to interview? And Dave was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking to him.
And it's nice, I think, for everyone to sort of see beyond the curtain about what it is like to work in the field in Hollywood, regardless if it's Star Trek or anything else. And I think sometimes people out there don't realize that this is work and this is a job and there's issues and concerns there that go there. So I thought that was great. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Liz has to say. We've also got Todd Marks, who was the video computer playback supervisor for lots of things, including Star Trek Picard Season 3, going back to Nemesis, tons of other movies. We've got cinematographer Jeremy Benning joining us as well in a future episode. He's the cinematographer for The Expanse, The Boys, among many other different things. So
a lot of really good documentary work.
A lot of good National Geographic history, things on Netflix. So we're super excited. And that is all good news for you because you get to hear what they have to say, as well as the fact that means that Trevor and I cut about 2 to 3 hours of garbage between us that we just record for every episode and then just throw it out because no one needs to hear that, Trevor. No one needs to hear us and our witty banter, wouldn't you say?
No one needs to hear you, Don.
Well, I'd be, I don't know if you know this, Trevor, but I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, but then I stopped growing in 4th grade and my voice started sounding like this and I realized it was all over.
Excuse me, I just vomited in my mouth when you told me that you wanted to be an actor. So let me just give me a minute while I clean this out. Thank you.
On that note, just thinking about, Liz is about to join us. So she's an art director, the look and feel of Star Trek, Trevor. I thought Picard did a great job in the last season, especially.
I agree.
I grew up with Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. Everything looked really different. Also, the original TOS movies growing up were a big part of my life. Is there like an iconic Star Trek look for you?
Yes, my favorite look is the motion picture, but more because it represents the end of an era of a certain type of filmmaking. The 70s era filmmaking where, they did longer shots, wider shots, which required special effects to last longer on the screen. Sets had to be bigger, way more extras. To me, I find it to be far more cinematic. I mean, it's directed by Robert Weiss, who edited Citizen Kane and was the director of the original West Side Story. It looks cinematic. And then, that era, ended. I believe it actually ended with Warren Beatty's Reds. Hollywood was losing way too much money on these productions that were running out of control, and so budgets got tighter, and at the same time, film stocks got faster, lenses got faster, and they just started shooting tighter and quicker, which meant that, sets could be smaller, special effects didn't have to be on the screen that long. I mean, don't get me wrong. My favorite Star Trek, the best Star Trek film, I believe, is Wrath of Khan. But you compare that to the look of the motion picture, and they couldn't be on more opposite ends of the spectrum. And the 80s, it kind of changed all that for better or for worse. I think for worse. But with the development of green screen and volume and stuff like that, I think one specific director, Denis Villeneuve, is bringing that back, those longer shots, those wider shots, because, they can they don't have to rely on sets and actors. They can just add it. They can shoot from far away. They can shoot a very wide shot and, just add things in later, which, makes it still a cheap and fast production. And I personally think that whether they meant it or not, that's had a personal effect on my favorite contemporary Star Trek show, and that's Star Trek New Worlds, a show that I think is absolutely wonderful.
Excuse me, Trevor, it's Strange New Worlds? You should really know, if it's your favorite show, how to pronounce the name of your favorite show, my friend.
So let's dub that in. Star Trek Strange New Worlds. What did I call it?
New Worlds. No, we're keeping this all in because our listeners need to know who you are at your core.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's someone who just stumbles.
Fair enough.
Stumbles.
I'll give you that one, Don. I don't take that as an insult. I do stumble quite a bit.
It's a bigger topic than we have time for today, but there's the look and feel of Star Trek, the films.
Yeah.
Which, again, there is this, Next Generation things had to be smaller budgets, things like that. Some scripts were better than others, but then that in Star Trek TV. And I think in general, Star Trek plays better on TV. I love many of the films, but I think, again, when there were seasons that were longer than 10 episodes, I think a lot of interesting character development and a lot of play could happen. I think you're right. Strange New Worlds is great. They do a lot in a short season. The look is fantastic there.
Unbelievable.
But it's like a one-off, which is great. It feels like watching the original series, I assume, what it felt like back in the 60s. So I love it. I want more. With Star Trek Picard, it felt like coming home to a more mature Next Generation look and feel. So I really, loved what they did. But I think we have to sort of separate the films from, what can be done in TV. But one thing that Dave Blass, talked about last week was how the budgets are, the shows are getting less, meaning there's fewer episodes, but they want them to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's tough to do that in TV as well. So it's a balance.
Yeah, and I do think in the case of Star Trek Picard Season 3, though I think it looks great, the production design is great, I had the feeling that that the budgets were tighter. Again, it's just a feeling. The budgets were tighter. The resources were more limited. I mean, this was a show where the first two seasons, it was about one person. And then in the third season, they bring everybody back, which makes a shoot far more complicated. My guess is that they were still working with the same budget as seasons 2 and seasons 3, with the exception, I'm guessing, more for, bringing back in, the actors from the original series. And I don't know. It looks good. I just felt it also looked compromised. And that could also be a pandemic thing. I mean, I know this
was shot during COVID. Seasons 2 and 3 were shot back to back.
Right.
During the heart of COVID here, so that's a challenge.
I know this is Star Wars, but I'm shifting over to Star Wars. But to me, it was very, very obvious that Obi-Wan was a COVID shoot, was a shoot compromised by COVID.
Yes.
And now since I've seen that, I can start to see it in other places. And to me, the most obvious ones were, of course, Obi-Wan and Picard Season 3. And oddly enough, Ted Lasso, I felt, was completely compromised.
Interesting.
Not just by the scripts, by the look of it. And it was really unfortunate because that first season, I know this isn't sci-fi, but that season
was wonderful.
Is damn near perfect.
Ted Lasso was great. No, I heard there were a lot of script issues and a lot of behind the scenes drama with Ted Lasso. Yeah. So, I'm happy to morph no-win scenario into the Ted Lasso show. Maybe by episode 75 or so. Going back to the Star Wars thing, I think, a lot of these TV shows for Disney on Star Wars, they're shot on volumes. To me, they're every time I was watching The Mandalorian, I was just counting the steps till they cut because they were going to hit whatever part they were hit, where they just feel restricted shooting in the volume, which is basically a big curved, for people who don't know, LED wall. You basically put up there, you're in the desert, you put the desert up there, and you're able to film in a desert with the sun that you can move or keep up there. And the light from that wall plays somewhat realistically on your actors versus doing it in green screen or actually going out to a desert and shooting. So it helps with production, but now you're doing pre-production for months and months ahead of time instead of doing it in post after the fact. I just found it was limiting very much in terms of where cinematographers were, where people were putting the cameras, how actors were blocked and things like that. So I think that was a limitation.
I felt the same way, and I saw those same limits in Picard season 3.
That's interesting. There wasn't much volume in Star Trek. They used some. I think Discovery and Stranger Worlds a fair bit, but there was a lot of balancing in Picard season 3 in terms of a lot of story to get through, a lot of characters to build up towards and things like that. But I thought it was super entertaining and so much was well done. So I'm looking forward to hearing Liz after the break. Should we get to it?
Yes, please. Anything to stop talking with you.
Thank you so much. And everyone can send their comments, questions, and hate mail to Trevor at nowinscenariopodcast@gmail.com. That's nowinscenariopodcast@gmail.com. And we'll be right back.
Your voice is so grating.
Hi, I'm Liz Kloczkowski. I'm an art director for the film and TV industry. And I'm, I guess, most known for Star Trek Picard and Promising Young Woman.
I watched another podcast with you. I think it was like Countdown City Geeks or something you did.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned it's pretty odd to have art directors be hot for podcasts. Star Trek Picard got a lot of random internet people interested in you. But can I think most people don't know what art directors do, what production designers do. Can you give us kind of background about what it is you do as an art director?
It's strange for art directors to get like rock star treatment because we're just art directors. Like, we're not the actors. We're not like, nobody knows who we are. But for some reason,
you're rock stars to us. Trust me. I care where
she's calling us no one, Trevor. That's the thing.
We care. I care way more about the people behind the scenes than the people in front of the lens. That's just me.
That's the Star Trek fandom, though. They do care about what's behind the lens. They care about all of the artists, the musicians, the directors, the writers. I mean, they know everybody by name. So art directors have been thrown in. But even since the original series, I mean, Matt Jeffries is a household name, and he was the art director. He's not acting in the show. They named a set after him, the Jeffries Tube. But that's, Andrew Probert, like all these guys, they're the Okudas, like they're behind the scenes people, and they're super, super well known. So for me, it's very strange because I've worked on a bunch of shows that haven't gotten nearly that type of reception. Are
you hoping for like a Liz Nassau? Like what's your dream?
Yeah. Kloczkowski too, maybe. So you know what you can tell when you talk to Dave. He calls things the blast doors.
Oh, I wish we knew that. We just spoke to him actually.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
We keep trying to put our names and stuff, but it always fails. But yeah, so art directors, we're behind the scenes people. We basically manage what you're seeing on camera that's not an actor. So we're kind of like project managers, or you could like a not a construction coordinator because we work with the construction coordinator, but it's kind of like the wedding planner of the film set. So we're construction, paint, greens, drapery, set dressing. We liaise all of those departments to the lighting departments, to the camera departments, to the ADs, assistant directors. Maybe the actors want something. We're day to day with the director. Hey, the director's asking for this. So we basically facilitate getting this stuff delivered for the shoot day.
And can you take us through like when you get a call to be on a gig, right? Is it production designer calling? Everyone works with the same people or frequent the same group of people. Often they bring you on. But take us through like what it is from that first call up through, being on the show.
Sure. So there's an opening. So someone will be hiring, and usually it'll be the supervising art director, which is like the designer's right hand. So it'll be production designer, then supervising art director, then as many art directors as you need and as many assistant art directors as you need, depending on the workload of the show. So sci-fi shows, Westerns, period pieces, those historical dramas tend to have more art department versus Los Angeles contemporary might have one art director. So it really depends on how big the show is. But if there's an opening and they're already shooting, or like for Picard, they were in the middle of season 2 and they needed a replacement. And so they call you and they say, hey, we heard you're good. Can you start Monday? It's not like, so yeah, no problem. So they send you the deal in by email. It was a little harder actually for me to get in the door with Star Trek, but like most shows, they're just like I had a show shooting in Mexico. They called me on a Friday and they were like, can you start Monday? Meaning you need to be in Mexico on Sunday. And so I had like 2 days to pack my life up. But once they send you the deal in the mail, it's like a legal document. You sign your deal memo, you agree to what the rate is, and then the travel coordinator sends you the info or the office will send you, here's where you park on your first day to get your pass or whatever. It just depends on where it's shooting. Like Universal Studios, they'll just send you, a drive on and say, meet us at this building.